How are you, Brian?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. And thank you for having me as well. It's good to be here. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. And without taking much time, we're going to go ahead and get started. So tell us who you are. Give us your background. I always tell my guests, tell us where you grew up, where you went to school. We want to make sure we are not dealing with a mystery person here.
First of all, I have a Kenyan national ID. So I'm a Kenyan individual.
Okay.
I was born in Mombasa, raised in Nairobi.
Uh-huh.
I was educated in Nairobi, university, also Nairobi and the UK as well.
Okay.
I say I have a master's in law, in international economic law, from the University of Warwick, and I'm also an attorney who's been licensed by the Kenya Advocates Bar. Yeah, the Kenya Law Society.
Tell us, what is your field? I know with attorneys you have different fields, just like with the doctor. So what is your specialty?
So in terms of my specialty, I'm a commercial corporate lawyer. That touches a few things. Land is a commercial issue, so finances, etc. So, but the people who say conveyancy is separate from commercial law, but I put it all in one basket. Okay. But I'm a commercial corporate lawyer, and that's what I've specialized in, and that's my background as well in terms of trading.
Okay, and you are a member.
Yes. And maybe to add a bit more, I've worked in the US as well, New York. I've also worked in the UK as well. Now I'm in Kenya, which is my home country. So that's me. And I love law and I love helping my clients get value for money. I've done a summer internship in New York and New Jersey as well. Yeah, so I have a fair share of understanding the issues there, but that's a long time ago, like 10 years ago. That's a long time ago.
Not really, not really. But if you've stayed here and you've stayed in the UK, you are a good ex-diaspora person to work with and talk to. So you know the issues that the Kenyan in the diasporas face. But today, I brought you here to talk to us about the process of buying land in Kenya. I think that is the biggest issue when it comes to investment that the Kenyans in diaspora face, whereby either we don't know the process properly or we think we know the process, but we end up making mistakes, or sometimes we think the deal has gone through, we even have a title deed, but it's still not a good deal. So take your time and tell us, from the minute I develop an interest to buy a piece of land, all right, to the minute I get a title deed, what should happen in between? What steps should I take?
So I will categorize it into two phases.
Okay.
And I would say there's the actual transaction and the team which you're going to use to execute your transaction. So those are the two things I'm going to bring on board. Okay. So in terms of, say that you have an interest in a specific property, and you have already either identified it online or you've been referred to, you already know the price on the table. You already have the commercial decision in your mind that I'm going to go through with the transaction.
Yeah.
Once that happens is to understand the terms. Understanding the terms, the main thing is understanding the payment terms in terms of, am I going to pay with the whole amount in 90 days, 60 days, 30 days, 180 days. So the terms are very key.
Okay.
So that's how we start off. So understand the terms, understand who the owner is. Once you do that now, we can start now the proper transactional phase. We'll call it that. So for the transactional phase, you start with, if yes, you were there in the call last week when I mentioned about know your seller as a person.
Yeah.
If you know your seller, you're able to identify, I'm not going through an agent, I'm not going through this person, or the agent is selling on behalf of someone else, or this person is a power of attorney for someone else. Knowing your seller helps you identify, okay, who am I going to deal with? Once you identify that, you know your terms, you know your seller, you know every other thing about the money, quantity, what is going to, what will actually be owed against you. Once you have that figured out, now you go towards understanding, okay, do you have a title document? The title document is the most important part in terms of identifying whether that land really exists.
Okay.
If the land does exist, what I tell my client is, sometimes don't even engage me then. If you can do it by yourself, okay. If you need my help, I can assist.
Okay.
Do a search. The search deals with the land registry. I'm happy to actually do it, and I do it for all my clients actually. It's always easier because of the relationships there. I'm able to work with the land registry people because they can be something else in our country, but we're able to work with them and make it a smooth process for the client. Once we identify that a search has been done, the particulars in the document relate with what has been shared with you and what's actually in the record at the land registry. Now we can go to the phase of the transaction itself, where we say, okay, can we do a transactional document, which is a contract, agreement for sale? Once we have an agreement for sale, it documents all the things relating to what has been commercially agreed upon between the parties. And that's an issue of the payment timelines. When does completion happen? When does the transfer happen? And at what point do I get possession of that property? Because those are the most important parts. Because everything else is here, no there. But the main issue is understanding, okay, what are my payment obligations? When does completion happen? When does the transfer happen? And when do I get the possession of that property? Because ultimately, every client wants to get possession of their property. You want to actually say, okay, now this is mine. It's my land. Transfers happen. It's been effected in the land registry. So those are the commercial terms which you want in the document. Once that happens and we go through the cycle, and that's where a lawyer can come. And that's, of course, after the diligence phase, which is the most important part, is we do now the transfer of that property. The transfer is where land ownership is changed from one party to another. And we work with the biggest stakeholder being the land registry, because that's where the transfer is actually effected. And from that, you get a new title deed. The new title deed actually now is the instrument of law that says I actually own this land. It's like an ID in that's an ID in Kenya. So that's the cycle of it. And now I tell every client, do not always assume this, but after that entire process and transfers being effected, always do a post-registration search. Most people, post-registration search. Most people assume, oh, I have a title deed, it's been effected. What if you've been sold a fake property? What if they worked with the people inside, like the land registry, and it's not been effected accordingly? A post-registration search helps you know that in the land registry document, your name appears as the proprietor of that property. You own it, in other words. You are the owner of that property. That's the most important thing, because I've seen people who have done the whole transfer thing, they've paid money, they've done all that, but things in the land registry do not relate with what you think, So it really depends a lot, So that's the whole cycle of what I can say land transaction should be like.
That's why I wanted to bring you here. And I'm so glad you say that. Why does somebody have to take a title deed when they're doing a search? Can't you just go and say, I need this plot number and tell me who owns it? Because to me, I feel like I'm trying to find who is the owner, not to give these government employees all the information. And they just say, it's owned by Brian.
So there are two things here. There is an aspect of there's an aspect of data protection as well, because if you own a property, you don't want anybody going and knowing your records in Kenya. By the time you have a copy of that document, it means that you have gone a bit further ahead in terms of just a random number or land reference number in your head. So they always insist, by the time you're coming to do a search, at least have a copy of the title, because it means that it's intentional. It's not someone in the streets saying, I want to know what you own. So the land registry, that's a rationale in the land registry as well. So in terms of documents, I actually handle something similar where a client bought a piece of land. They didn't do the post-registration search. it was not affected accordingly. That land was subdivided and sold to so many other people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So in terms of the process, a post registration search helps you identify that your land is actually owned by you and you actually have the proprietorship over it. Because now in that, if anybody else is going to go through the process of subdividing your land, they have to go through you.
Okay.
Now the flip side is if they're colluding with land registry people, and say example, it's a cartel of people who have identified your land, they're like, it's good, nice area, valuable land, etc. If you're not physically there, you are not utilizing your land, I tell someone, have a caution over that property or like a restriction over that property. It only costs you like, I'll say, give or take like $30. $30 is all it takes to protect. Yeah.
What is a restriction? What do you mean by restriction? What is that?
The restriction means that if, example, I apply a restriction on a property, it means that no transaction can happen on that property unless I say yes. And for it even to happen, I have to remove that restriction on that property.
Okay.
Yes. And something similar. So something in Kwale that I've seen example, Kwale is a new area in the coast. So that area has a lot of like land issues and most people get either scammed, they lose their titles, you have squatter issues on that property, etc. So having a restriction on such properties means that no random guy will come and sell your property to a third party.
Okay. And is it one time or annual, or it's just one time?
No. It's just a one-time application.
Oh, okay.
And the only other time so it's a one-time application, and the only other time you can do anything like with that property, you have to remove the caution, the restriction,
And can you put this restriction at any time, or this is something that has to be done during the
No, at any time.
Okay.
At any time. If you're a landowner, you just say, due to circumstances, etc., I want to do a restriction on this property, and I'll be the sole individual who am the owner of this property. I don't want any transactions happening on that land, especially if you're away.
Okay.
If you're utilizing the land, it doesn't make sense because you're physically there. But if you're outside the country, and you're in areas where it's prone to such issues of people selling your land when you're not there, corruption, etc., land registry issues, etc. I always advise the client, look, just do a restriction. It only costs you like $30. It's going to save you a lot of headache in the future at the end of the day.
And what do they require? Say either you hire an attorney or however you decide to do it. So you go to the land registry and tell them you want to put restriction on your piece of property.
So in terms of so in terms of process, there are statutory documents which have been provided for under the land registry, the Ministry of Land. So that's what you have to fill. Of course, I need a copy of your ID, copy of PIN, passport photo, and with that you do an application, you sign it off, and you just file it. Once you file it, you of course have to haggle those guys in the registry, which is usually like the hardest part of most of these things, is the haggling part. Once you have it registered at the land registry, you're good. You're good. It's as simple as that.
What do they give you? What do they give you in return? Like once you pay, do you get anything to show that you did that, or it's just a receipt?
So other than the registration receipt, if you see for that restriction, that restriction is registered against your title. So if anybody, so that land reference number and your title number, it will be registered against it. So no one can go and do a transaction on that property, and even a bank. Say that you want to take a bank charge or a facility with a bank, you have to remove the restriction first so you can do it.
Oh, wow.
Yes, exactly. It's a security, so just against the title of the property.
That is something I have never heard of. I'm glad you talked about that, because now, all right. And going back to title search, can you just go and say, I need you to check for me land or person number XYZ, I need to know who is the owner.
Yeah, sorry. So a land registry has an obligation to protect your data at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So the assumption here is if you have a copy of a property document, it means that you have gone a bit further than just overthinking it in your head.
Okay.
So, yeah, so it's an issue of a balancing you trying to know more versus them protecting your data as a landowner in Kenya.
Okay.
And yeah, so say that I own some property at Nairobi, that is my right as a Kenyan to own property in Nairobi.
Yeah.
If anybody can randomly just go and access that data or actually have an offense for that. So the land registry, in terms of the process, has told someone, if you're going to come and do a search of a property, at least you should have a copy.
Yeah.
It means that at least you have told the owner, and the owner actually shared with you a copy of that document. So it means that it's a bit further on the road than just a random guess in terms of who owns a property.
Okay, so
yeah.
I guess
It's a balancing act. Yes, it's a balancing act.
Okay.
And if I can just add a bit more, it helps them to verify the particulars, because I've been instances where a search is being done of a property and some of the records are not fully recorded in the land registry documents.
Okay.
So they could be doing a search and then they realize, like, the name is correct, the location is correct, but the back number, there's a reference number in the back of a title document, or rather most of the documents, that actually has a coded number. It could be wrong or it's not updated. So it gives you, as in a lot of things we see. So a search document, and that's why I say a post-registration search helps you clean up all that. Because once you do it, when they're doing the post-registration search was being done by someone different, you're able to see some of those issues early enough. Not after 5 years, like when you're doing a transaction and then you're told, okay, we have to first rectify the transactional document, the title document, before you can go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So there are issues that sometimes we are not even aware of. We are always like, oh, we are trying to be careful so we are not scammed by the person selling the land. But we also have to be very careful with what the government has. Because like you say, there could be an error and you're holding this title deed, but you don't realize that there's something else in the land office. So I'm glad you said that. And as far as you talked about the contract. Should you buy a piece of land from a company or an individual without a sales agreement, a contract?
If you're buying anything, no matter what it is, be it a car, be it land, be it anything, always have documentation. Documentation helps you know all the particulars, the expectations of each party at what point.
Yeah.
Know what are your risks associated with that transaction.
Yeah.
So, for example, it's a land buying company. From my experience, the first thing that they do is to send to you a letter of offer. Letter of offer say they're going to buy this land, is subject to contract, etc. And based on that, it proceeds to the actual contract.
Yeah.
If you're going to pay a deposit or anything without even a letter of offer at least,
a problem.
Then there are a few questions you have to ask the seller. Even like where So everything has to be documented, and that's the document you can use against a seller if you have any disputes arising. If not, it's your word against mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got you. And you are a lawyer, and you know these contracts are also drafted and written by lawyers, and some of us read these things and we have no clue what it means. I feel like some of these agreements have clauses in there that, of course, everything there is because it's their lawyer, it's working for the seller. But for me as a buyer, and I think, again, this is where you need a lawyer in this process, because some of these things you don't even understand what it means. We just get these agreements and we just sign. And in it, for example, it might say something like, in a situation where you, the buyer, is unable to complete payment, they will give you money back minus maybe 10, 20%, whatever the case is. But then there is a clause that sometimes won't be indicated, which means if I buy and I pay full price and the seller doesn't give me a title deed, what do I get? Sometimes that clause is missing. And I think that's what I'm saying, because if you have an attorney, they will be able to quickly figure out, okay, you look for my interest as a buyer, whereas the attorney for the seller is looking for the interest of the seller. Can you tell us about these contracts and all this language that we don't even understand what it means?
So for transactions, you have to think of it like, if a contract has been sent to you by a seller, that contract has been drafted to support the seller's interests.
Yes.
You as a buyer have your own separate interests at the end of the day.
Yes.
And I'm a lawyer, so I can say it honestly. So I've drafted contracts where I'm like, wow, if on another side, I'll be angry. And people come and sign, and you're like, wow, they didn't even read. As in, and because you protect the interests of your client at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Your client has to be protected. And I play both sides at the end of the day in terms of my lawyer. So the interest
you're getting darker and darker and darker. What happened? You get dark in Kenya?
There you go. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a time. So it's 6:30 here. It's becoming a bit dark, Nairobi.
Okay.
So the interest of your client becomes a paramount for every lawyer in terms of drafting of a document.
Okay.
So we have seen instances of clients who say, "Oh, I'm okay. It's a group. They have sold several properties. They have a template contract. But if you read that contract, you could lose your property in a heartbeat.
Yes.
In a heartbeat. And your interest at the end of the day won't be protected. So I advise a client, look, sometimes just ask even a relative of yours to go through the document, or just go through it and understand that document. If you don't want to use a lawyer, sit down, try read some of the clauses so you know what you're doing ahead of time. Not being ambushed by, they have not completed, you have paid the full amount, there is no transfer happening. What's next? A document is quiet about what's next. There are no repercussions. There is nothing. So just read the document, understand it. And that's why sometimes we come in as professionals and actually help and say, look, this contract is a bit skewed. Let's revise it a bit. Let's have some comments inside the document. We will, of course, engage the other lawyer on the other side and try to have a balanced document, which at the end of the day, either you get your money back or you have land. Either of the two.
Okay.
What
if you're dealing with somebody selling land? That happened to me once, and I said, all right, I'm on a book plot number XYZ, but I need to give the information to my lawyer in Kenya so he can go through everything. And the person said, no, we can't wait. We have to let that, I can't wait for all that process if you have to go through a lawyer. Should you morife and just run for your life?
Look, if it's too good, think twice. That's what I usually tell my clients. If it's too good, think twice, especially for Kenyans. If it's too good, think twice. Because someone who's selling won't be, if it takes a day or two to actually go through documentation, you can't be that impatient. Nothing, a world won't stop. So if someone is being too hasty in terms of like, if you're going through a lawyer, I can't do this, there's some red flag there. So just understand, what is someone trying to achieve? For every seller, they want to sell for value.
So
you want to obtain.
That was rash. That was very rash. But I eventually figured out what the issue was, because the person promoting it did not even want to wait for people to do a title search, which takes a day. Like literally, somebody go do a title in the morning. The next day or the same day, they can give you the results. But the land was real. The land was real. But what happened was they were showing a different location, whereas the actual land was like 3 kilometers away. So they were showing us a place that was right next to Mombasa Road. You could see all these cars. You could see, so that was what it was. And that's another issue, Brian, that we are being faced with. before, I think we used to be so much concerned about unanunua, but then it's air, there's nothing there. But then now we have people who have the actual land is there, not all of them, but a few of them. But when the people promoting these plots, whatever, they start filming, they go to the best location and they tell you this is the location. I mean, we've had people tell us here is electricity and they point to it. Here is water, we see water. And that is a highway. You see cars, I mean, like you can see it. Only to send somebody and they tell you, no, that's not the location. Like in this case, the person I said, you see where they were filming? You have to go back on Mombasa Road, go back towards Nairobi, then exit Mombasa Road, go another 2 kilometers inside. That's where the plots are. I mean, like, how?
Yeah, so that's what I call misrepresentation. Misrepresentation is where someone represents an issue as X, but it's not X. It is Z or Y or W. Yeah, so and especially for people who are not around the country, it's something that they actually face a lot.
Yeah.
Where someone tells you this land is off the highway, this land is ideal for the investment, etc. But there is no access to that property. And some of the issues I've dealt with actually relating to that. So people actually, when they come back home, they go and look for a property and then they're like, wow, it's not what was sold to me.
Yeah.
But if you look at the contractual documents, you will see a clause about warranties and indemnities, etc.
Which we don't know what it means.
So if you look at most of these commercial documents that relate to real estate, somewhere in between there about warranties, they say that you do not warrant. There is no like obligation on the side of the seller. You have looked at the property and you have accepted it as it is.
Yeah.
There's a simple clause and that alone makes them whatever they have sold, you have accepted as is.
Wow.
Yeah. So what I usually do as a lawyer, I speak to the client. We know what the issues are.
Yeah.
I have people in my team who inspect the properties at least. For areas which are accessible, it's easier. But of course, the areas where it becomes a bit hard. But for the team, I always try as much as possible to actually send someone there to verify the property and make sure like it actually exists. One. Two, it is based on the description which has been shared. It's the exact description which has been shared. In terms of it's 5 kilometers off the road. Even if it's 6, it's okay. 4, it's okay. But it's fairly, it isn't numbers. Not it's off the highway, but it's 10 km inside. That's misrepresentation. So we always inspect the property. That's a physical due diligence of that property. The other thing is understanding where do the beacons sit in that property. Is it actually a quarter of an acre or not an eighth? So those are some of the things that people don't actually think about. So we try to tell a client, look, it might cost you a bit in terms of doing that. You can work with a surveyor, it's not even me. You can work with them directly, you can recommend someone. But please do it, because 5 years down the road, that spend costs more. In terms of you going through a rectification process, trying to understand, this happened, a land that does not exist. Spend right now, avoid an issue in the future.
I absolutely agree with you. Can you imagine you buy a piece of land and you get the title deed, you have it, so it's legit. But when you go on the ground, it's a whole different story. Different story. So we were shown a different picture, a different video. So I think if you are watching and you buy, because sometimes we buy because our favorite popular YouTuber is the one promoting this piece of land, or our favorite celebrity in Kenya is the one promoting, and I'm like, if so-and-so is the one telling us to buy this, I'm buying. That person can't lie to me or whatever. And I'm not saying they are lying, but I think we have to understand that those are brand ambassadors. It's not their job to hire.
They're selling.
Yeah, yeah.
They're selling. They're selling.
We still have to do the due diligence, regardless of who we saw selling that piece of land.
Yes.
Brian, I have a few questions for you.
Okay.
The first thing, the most popular one, is land rates. If we buy land in Kenya, we are in diaspora. Okay, majority of the time our land is just sitting there, we haven't built, or even if we have built, but let's just say unoccupied land. So do we have to pay rates and what are they called, land rates and taxes to unoccupied land?
So yeah, that's a question I really get a lot from my clients. And so in terms of charges, which you should be thinking about at the top of your mind is, once you own a land, it's either you're paying land rent or land rates.
Yeah.
Land rates alone as a standalone for freehold title documents, or land rates and land rent. Because those are two charges which actually exist on the property. So land rates are usually imposed by county governments. Land rent is by the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning. So those are two different charges which you always have to consider at the end of the day. So if you own a freehold title, the government, of course, expects you to pay some, depending on the county, the area is owning etc. Land rates will exist for freehold title and a leasehold title. That's automatic.
So how often are they paid? Because I don't think a lot of people know.
That's an annual charge. That's an annual charge that is imposed by the county governments. It's just more of like a revenue generator that they actually use to actually increase revenues for some of these counties. So depending on your county, the rate will actually vary, and also depending on your property value as well. So expect land rates. One thing which might not apply across the board is land rent. Land rent is for leasehold title documents. So you are renting from government. It's a leasehold. You're being leased by government. So that rate sometimes will be called a peppercorn in the documents, which is like 1 shilling or 2. Doesn't really matter. You don't have to totally pay for it. But for leasehold properties, make sure that you read your title document and what's actually charged on that document. If not, there's a fine imposed, and that interest can escalate quite quickly.
Let's make sure we understand that. So what you're saying is there's two different type of payments that you have here.
Yes, exactly. Heavies, yes.
With a freehold title deed, you are paying rates. Yeah.
You pay rate, yes. And depending on the county, yes.
Depending on the county, and they are paid yearly.
Annually, yes.
Annually. All right. And then if you are leasehold, you're paying the rent annually.
Land rates and land rent, yes.
Oh, you're paying both. Okay. Are they taxes too, or is there something else that you're paying to
those are, so those are things we consider like government charges, levies, it's like a tax on that property. Yes.
And you are paying to the local government, yeah? You pay to the local government?
So, exactly. For rates, you pay to the local government. To rent, which is leasehold, you pay to the national government.
And again, we don't know. A lot of people don't. I'm sure some do, because the seller doesn't, I mean, it's not up to the seller to tell you what to do. Just like if I sell you a house, I don't have to tell you need to clean the house. It's up to you to go figure it out, or you have to pay association fees or whatever. So I'm glad you explained that. So now we know that if you have any property in Kenya, you have to pay rates, even if you're in diaspora, even if it's undeveloped. Otherwise, those charges accumulate, and then they charge you interest, on whatever you haven't paid.
Yes, of course. So for any, it's just like a government charges. For any unpaid levies, government charge, taxes, etc., there's only that interest incurred.
Okay. Can you lose your property if they keep going on and on? Can they
It's never that severe in Kenya, but ultimately with a leasehold property, you can, because remember it's from government. So if you abscond too much, they obviously have the right as a title owners of that property.
So it's like you have this house, you're supposed to pay rent, but you don't pay rent. So the owner can just
exactly. So after they've haggled with you, you could eventually lose that property. But I've never experienced such a situation. That has to be a dire situation, or the interest associated with that land here.
Okay. All right. So that's clear. Now, this next question: spousal consent. If you're buying land, there are different ways you buy land. You can buy from somebody. Let's say you own a piece of land and you're married and you want to sell it directly. Or I'm buying from a real estate company that deal with real estate. If I'm dealing with a company, let's start with a company. The owner of the company, does the wife have to consent to selling that piece of land, even though it's being sold under the umbrella of a registered company?
No. Remember, in Kenya, so companies have their own identity and personality in the law. So it is a person. The company is a person. So in that regard, the company has no spouse.
It's a different.
The company is an entity. But when it comes to individuals now, and maybe I think the best thing is to understand the rationale of why this is actually imposed is to protect the home. Where there has gone out, he's drunk, he sells like the land randomly in the bar. The wife has no idea, or something has happened, the land is sold by. So the whole idea of having spousal consent is to protect the home, one, and protect the interests of the family in Kenya. So by the time you're selling that property, it should be a decision taken up by the family in most instances. And everybody is aware, not someone doing something in the darkness. And it goes to the whole aspect of joint ownership of things, especially for the homestead. And that's why things like co-owning property with their spouses, with their wife, etc., is a big thing. And when you go even to like succession issues, it comes to play where someone asks you, are you married? Yes. What the beneficiaries, etc. So having a spousal consent is very important to safeguarding the homestead. So in terms of process, there are transactions which are worth a lot of money, and the only thing holding it back is them there, the wife is selling the land. Or the wife is not ambia them there, she's selling the land.
Wow. Okay.
So having spousal consent is important to make sure that everybody is aligned. There is no hidden transaction in a family setup. That's the whole rationale behind it. Yes.
Could it be a problem later on if you buy from someone and the transaction goes through, then the wife figure out later, or the husband, whichever, and they go to court? Can that be challenged if you bought without one party's consent?
So the onus is at the land registry in most instances, but yes, as part of the transfer process, the land registry itself asks for it. If there is oversight on that end, so I've been in instances where, say, a spouse, as in someone has lost a spouse, has tragically passed away, and they still have to do a consent. A spousal consent. It's an affidavit saying, I am not married at this particular point. I have no spouse.
Okay.
I am so that can nullify a transaction in the sense of like you didn't go through the due process of what is required. And due process for land transaction is the most important thing. You have to go through the merits of, okay, have we done this? Is that transfer documents? Do we have all the particulars, ID, PIN number, passport photo, spousal consent, transfer document signed? Those are the main things that you require. And the particulars in that transfer documents relate to that transaction. Because you can also have a transfer document that the particular says 5 acres and it's 1 acre.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or the land reference number, instead of saying 852, it's 8851. That's a different land.
Got you. Wow.
Simple things as entries can play a long thing. Some saying, "Oh, that land does not exist. You didn't follow the due process, or didn't do a spousal consent as required by law."
Okay.
And everything is by law. Yeah.
Okay, so that is clear. The next question is seller's surveyor's map, which is the map that we get when we buy a piece of land. They send you the map from the surveyor. But I think there is also something called like a government surveyor's map. I'm not sure. But I think tell us why, like there's a case that was going on, or I think still going on social media, where somebody says, oh, your wall is like a little bit inside of my land. And in that case, the surveyor, from what we hear online, is surveyor says, oh, he's the one who made a mistake. So how is the government able to issue somebody with a title deed with the wrong markings as far as the beacons? So the government has one thing and on the ground is another. How is that even possible?
That's actually quite possible, because remember, having a title deed is a matter of doing a transfer of that document.
Yeah.
And a surveyor's map helps you identify that property, the coordinates of that property, and where the beacon should lie. And for some of the transactional documents, especially for subdivided land and property like that, I always ask, as part of my completion document, we want beacon certificates.
Oh. From
the surveyor. Oh, yeah. They're issued out.
What is beacon certificates?
So beacon certificate is for every beacon in a property. There is, of course, coordinates, and that certificate is issued out by a surveyor. So it's his license against that beacon, in other words. So they have an obligation to verify that it's accurate. So if you're buying land in the middle of nowhere, as part of the transaction document, especially us, please, it's okay, it's fine, we are happy with it.
Yeah.
But as part of the completion document, please give us beacon certificates to verify the position of that property.
Yeah.
That now makes an obligation on those other people and the surveyor himself. So he has to be professional to actually make sure it's real and exists and the coordinates are exactly as has been put. If not, they go and do a rectification in the land registry. Yeah.
So, I think that is a very huge mistake if a surveyor make a mistake when they are marking a piece of land. I don't know how common that is. And even if you get these beacon certificates, I guess at the point you are buying, because I find that for us in diaspora, like we said earlier, you buy a piece of land and you leave it there for like 5 years before you even start to build or think what to do with it, or even 10 years. Those beacons are non-existent at that point. These beacons, they tell you, oh, we have beacons, we have this, but they are horrible. Some of them don't even last a year. They start cracking. I don't know how they are done. So you still have to go back and pay, I guess, a surveyor to go figure out where your land is, where your beacons are?
Yes, to an extent, yes.
Yeah.
So, and I might answer this based on an example that I'm actually handling right now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she might actually watch this. So please allow me to use as an example, but no names put. But there's a client of mine who was buying a property in Kilifi side. And so the property document, everything is perfect. We got the beacons, etc. But if you look at it, so at the point of verification, the land was reading XXS north. When you do a search, it's XXS south.
What?
Of the area. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So such small things mean that your land does not exist. So we went back, we actually pushed, and we're buying from a land selling company. And a big land selling company in Kenya, they had to go back. We pushed.
Wow.
Like we pushed, actually sent a surveyor back there to like rechange that entire area. Because like all the zonings were wrong.
Wow.
So such small things like that, because sometimes you're like, oh, okay, fine, it is okay, I'm happy, I like the property, etc.
Yeah.
But such a small thing like that, non-existent land, because when you do a search, it doesn't exist. the land reference number is okay, everything's okay. But if the location is not also okay, then where are you? What are you owning?
Having a title is not everything. It's not everything.
Having a title is not everything. You have to have a bulletproof ownership in terms of title, because things change. Land registry officials change. Someone has an interest in your property. What do you do? So having everything by the book and having proper records that can show that I actually own that property, I've paid stamp duty, I'm paying land rates, I'm paying land rent if applicable. That's the most important thing towards land ownership. A title deed can mean nothing in Kenya, unfortunately.
Okay, got you. And would you say for the Kenyans in the diaspora, when you buy a piece of land, even if maybe not put a perimeter work, or sometimes you don't even know what you want to do with it eventually, at least fence, because there's these issues of people wanajenga and then they use some part of your land, and then now you have to go through that whole court system, or ameingia kwangu, I don't know what. What do you think we should do?
So I always advise clients to at least, if you don't have a kamabahati house somewhere there, or someone to take care of your property, or occasionally inspect your property, just do a fencing. And again, I can share an example. I have an example where a client can buy a property X years ago. They go back to the US for like 10 years or so. You find a client, you find someone on your property farming, and they've been there for years, 15 years, and you have been away.
Wow.
As per the law, the law recognizes uninterrupted usage of someone's property for a period of time. They can claim ownership of that property.
Really?
As their own. Yeah, that's the law.
Are you kidding me?
I mean, that's the law. If you have not utilized your property for a period of time in Kenya, and is it 12 years of uninterrupted stay, they can claim that property. Uninterrupted utilization of someone's property. Uninterrupted.
Wow.
So I come to your land. I know you're outside the country.
Yes.
Uninterrupted means you have not even tried to put a fence or do anything, just bare land, and it's uninterrupted. If I come there for a good 12 years, I can claim it as my own, and the law will recognize that.
And then what happened? Where do you get a title deed if I have put restriction on my title?
You see, we have put restriction and other things. That's a different story. But if you haven't, it means I can claim. If you come and tell me to leave that property, I can actually sue you.
Wow.
Why are you telling me to leave this property? It's mine.
I've been developing it for 12 years.
Yeah, for 12 years I've been farming. I've been cultivating it.
Wow, I had no idea. I hope you guys, for those of you who didn't know, now you had it. If you have a piece of property in Kenya and developed, a squatter, somebody can go there, start farming, developing, doing stuff. And if they do it for 12 years, they can claim it as their own. All right, so let me hurry up here. What is, we talked about land search. I was going to ask you, is it necessary to do a search annually, once at least a year?
It depends. So it's not necessary to actually do a search every single time, but I would recommend it.
Okay.
That you make sure occasionally update your records, making sure that at this particular point I still own the property, at this particular point, and it's as per the government documents.
Okay.
So I recommend clients, it won't cost you much. Just do it. It's like $15 maybe if you have to do any facilitation, etc. Just always do. And some places like 500 bob and your shillings.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, I recommend it. Yeah.
Okay. Title deed conversion. That's going on in Kenya. What happens to those of us in diaspora? Do you have to be there in person? Can you do it online? What happened to us?
So I can't really share the whole process right now.
Okay.
But the title deed conversion relates to Nairobi properties. Yeah.
Oh,
so the Nairobi properties, the land reference number was changed to Nairobi blocks. You have block in this area, block in that area, and the government was able to map out Nairobi and have different areas in terms of the blocks now.
Okay.
So if, say, example, you own a house in South B, example,
yeah,
and you want to sell that property, and you're in the previous regime of land reference number, before you even proceed and sell it, you have to convert your title.
Okay.
You have to update the government records.
Okay.
Then based on that updating, now you can actually sell your property. So it's a process that does not require you to be there physically. If you can engage our farm,
okay,
we can just sign all the relevant documents, and then we know how to file them, etc., work with the proper land registry people, etc. Then the other thing that someone has to be, I won't say skeptical. I've found instances where people actually do a search and their file is not located because they've not done the conversion yet. So most of the land registry files were actually moved to a different location and the Huru like regime, and they were trying to do the conversions then. So you could be looking for your file at the land registry and you have not done your conversion, and you're told you can't see your file.
Wow.
I've dealt with a lot of that actually, and sometimes it's sad.
All right. So that's Nairobi. Are they going to get to the other counties later?
So they're starting off in Nairobi. So the plan is to scale up across the country, but of course we'll start somewhere. And Nairobi is the most complicated. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. The next thing is the two types of title deed, and I think you talked about that when we were talking about the rates. Can you please tell us the difference between freehold title deed and leasehold title deed? Because a lot of people don't know until they get these papers, especially when it comes to leasehold title deeds.
Good. So freehold or leasehold is an interest in land. That's what it's called, an interest in land. So what's your interest in land? Is it a freehold interest or a leasehold interest?
Okay.
So those are the two interests in land. So for the leasehold title, the government owns the land and they lease it out to you.
Okay.
Freehold title, of course, is still in Kenya for freehold, but you have ownership, complete, absolute ownership over that property.
Okay.
You don't require government consent on any items relating to that property. So those are the interests in land in Kenya. Either you have a freehold interest where you have absolute ownership of that property, or whether you have a leasehold where you actually lease from government and you pay land rent for that property, or as per the title document.
Okay. And let's say somebody buys 20 or 10 acres or 5 acres of leasehold. Can they bury a family member there, or can they be buried there? God forbid they pass and they have these 10 acres of land.
So yes. And it's something else I've actually dealt with. So the presumption is you can't.
Okay.
That's a presumption.
Okay.
But the issue of burial depends with the county.
Oh, okay.
And the county health officials. So I have a friend of mine, actually, one of my partners in my farm passed away in August this year. And some of the things we had to actually deal with is the burial permit, etc., which is a county issue.
Yeah.
So as long as you have sufficient area of the land, you have the proper certification in terms of approval from the county health board, etc., you can get a health permit. And your chief actually knows as well. That area chief, who we always think has no role, the role they play when it comes to burying someone is a huge role.
Okay. Got you. When the renewal is up for a leasehold, I understand they go for 99 years, but it does not mean if I buy a leasehold today, I'm getting 99 years. It's just being passed on. It could be 20 years, 40 years, 50, or it could start at 99. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so on the issue of leasehold it's just like a person. So 99 years is a term of that land, and you can buy it at 20, 30, 40, 50, and 90 even. So when that expires, you have the rights of preference.
Okay.
In terms of the law, where you have the right to actually apply as a first user of that property to actually renew that lease.
Okay.
I've seen instances of people who didn't renew that lease and nothing happened. But at the point where you're trying to do a transfer of that property, or if someone else applies, you're at risk at that particular point. But you have the right of first preference.
Okay, so I think what I would like you, if you can, to clarify. So let's say you're here in diaspora, you're 50 years or 60 years old, whatever age, and you want to build a retirement home in Kenya. So you save all your money and you go put up this 20, 30 million, whatever amount of money home in Kenya. And it's on a leasehold property. So if you have a lease that is, let's say 40 years is what is left on that particular lease, that means you'll be about 90 years when the lease is up. 80 years, whatever number of years you'll be, yes, your retirement home. How do you know the lease is up? Of course, yes, I guess it's on the papers, but I would think the address probably you're using today to lease, whatever the address the government have, may not be the same address you'll be at 80 or 90 years old. I also understand they put it on the Kenya Gazette. Like, how do you know so you don't lose this piece? Because if they're putting it on the Kenya Gazette, why are they even announcing that this lease is up on the Kenya Gazette?
So they have an obligation to at least notify you, and maybe something I can also like touch on right now, which is a bit separate from what you've asked me, the issue of the address. So I have clients who don't have a physical address or a PO box in Kenya.
Yeah,
they use my address as a lawyer.
Okay.
And in terms of the transaction document, it's care of my law firm.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing about the address is to identify that you're a real person.
Yeah.
And someone can prove that you exist.
Yes.
That's the whole rationale behind the address system when it comes to transactions.
Okay.
In terms of the renewal process, say you are 90 ETC, and God forbid you pass away, your estate should have the obligation to actually renew on your behalf, and that's why it's called your estate. And if you have passed away, that land has been actually transferred to someone else, example, that new owner has the obligation to now like renew that lease. And they will still have that right of first preference when it comes to the renewal process. The only risk is when someone assumes it. That's where risk is when someone assumes and someone else actually does that application for you, you will be at risk of actually losing your property. And if you work now with a law firm, say example, and my law firm, of course, the prayer is to go beyond me.
Yeah.
So have other people, have other partners. Even if I pass away, we still have a team of people and the address will be the same.
Yeah.
Is have a registered address which actually speaks to you.
Okay.
If you ever transfer that property, whoever gets it will get a new address on that document as well.
Okay. If I see a piece of land advertised on the Kenya Gazette and I'm a Kenyan, can I challenge that also? Let's say, is it a preference whether this is your personal home, you came from diaspora, or even from US within Kenya, you built your own home, and your goal is that you want your kids and your kids' kids to inherit that home that you built, and I'm another Kenyan, they are struggling. Can I go and challenge that and say, hey, I want an opportunity to lease this piece of land too? I saw it on the Kenya Gazette. As in the case of Delamonte, I think it's Delamonte, I saw something where they were being challenged about part of their land that they were not using. And I think they lost in that case.
They lost in the extent that they had a big chunk of land.
Yeah.
And it was unutilized.
Yeah.
So, and some of this land is in areas where it's an leasehold title document and it's unutilized. So the government can come and reclaim it. So that's a different story.
Okay.
But in terms of you being outside the country and you have seen an opportunity where a leasehold has actually lapsed, and you want to actually have it,
the first right of preference is the landowner.
Okay.
The existing right of.
And in the event, and the land register has actually been quite interesting in this, is they notify the landowner with that PO box that there's an application against your title document. I've seen that actually happen. And if it hasn't happened in most instances, it's because of interest of other people. From my experience. Yeah. But you get first right of preference as the existing landowner.
So in other words, is don't be scared, but just stay up to date with everything happening.
Definitely. It's just like your morning walk or coffee or your breakfast. Always be up to date. Make it a habit. Every year, at least once, be up to speed in terms of what you own in the country. Because in terms of regulation, Kenya is quite easy compared to the US or the UK or other markets in terms of land taxes, land rents, whatever. We're a bit more easy. And it's not as hard to actually own land in Kenya. The only thing is just be up to speed in terms of your documents, have the right information in terms of what you're doing, and you'll be fine. And have the right team. The right team is also very important.
I got you.
Yeah.
All right. Quickly, now that was all about leasehold. Can the government force you to convert your freehold title deed to leasehold?
I've seen instances where they have rezoned areas and people lost their freehold titles and then they became leasehold titles. And remember, leasehold title is just a way of government having new revenue streams. So if they see an area which is really thriving and they can make income out of that area, they might rezone that area, and yes, you might actually lose your freehold title, but you still have your property, but the interest in that land will change from a freehold to a leasehold. So that actually has happened, and yes, it's actually happened.
And how do you know if that were to happen? Let's say you're in diaspora, again, I guess they would still have to use the same original PO box or whatever address you use. And I'm sure it's not common, but if that were to happen about a piece of land you bought somewhere, how would you even know that has taken place? So you know now I need to start paying government rent and stuff like that.
So if that or not done by way of a notice, a legal notice will actually be issued out. And the zoning can happen in two phases. So there's an Ministry of Planning for both the national government and the county government. So in each of them can be able to like tweak some things here and there. So but for information to be passed across the board, there will be a legal notice issued out to what has been done. That legal notice will also be put in the Kenya Gazette as well. And it will actually say, you have 60 days, you have these days to, if you have any objection, please contact us, etc., etc. And they will identify specific property numbers, like this area, this. It just can't be generic. It's based on particulars. So they can say example, Lavington area was once a residential area, and most of them are freehold title documents. Now, a lot of those documents have changed into leasehold documents. Once they rezoned the area, it became a residential commercial area. So a lot of that, so the interest in that property changed from freehold to leasehold. And away from even that, is it changed from just a low density area in terms of housing to a high volume area as well. So that's because of the law. The area was changed in terms of law, and there are specific numbers and region which was mapped out, and it was put out in a legal gazette. Yes.
So we have to keep up with the Kenya Gazette also. That's what I'm hearing you say. Like, when do we ever read the Kenya Gazette?
So for like what we do, example, we always update our clients. We have like a brochure usually send out saying what is really happening in the market, etc. So what is changing that might affect our clients. So in terms of maybe a service that we also offer out to our clients is we keep them, once we know you own a property here, we always have documentation that relates to your property. So if there's any change in law, we'll update you. You don't even have to overthink it. You'll just have an SMS or an email from us or WhatsApp. Like, we're going to change ABCD, this has actually happened. Yes.
Okay. Another reason to have an attorney in Kenya. What's the difference between change of user and change of ownership when it comes to matters relating to land?
So change of user is where you change, say example, your property is a residential house. So the use of that property is a house alone. You can't put a mall, you can't put a shopping center, you can't put a petrol station, you can't put anything other than a house in that property, or even like apartments.
Yes.
So a change of user is where you go back to the county government, and you also work with the national government, which is actually filed with the NLC, the National Land Commission in Kenya, where you change the user. User is, you change it from this type of property that you can do one house to I want to put 20 apartments inside it. And that area only requires one house. So you have to go seek approval. You seek consent to actually change the utilization. That change is like changing the utilization of a property. So once you change utilization, you can now go ahead and use the property as you fit and based on the application documents as well. Change, and then the other one was what? Sorry, what was the other question?
Oh, I was saying the difference between change of user, change of ownership.
So change of ownership is what we talked about, where there's a transfer and it moves from one person to another. So I own a property, I transfer it from me to you.
Okay, that's clear. And when you change user, let's say this is a residential area, so there's gonna be a lot of people who have built their own homes there. And here I am, I wanna put a huge apartment next to them or some type of business. Do the neighbors all have to approve that, yeah, we are going to let her put that business there, or what's the deal?
If you have critical mass, yes. Once you have critical mass, because there's an aspect of public participation in terms of what you're doing for the change of user process. So if you have critical mass and you have, say, a few guys who approve it, and remember, once you're doing a change of user, there is a board which will be put outside your property that this person intends to change the property from this user to that user. If you have any objection, please do so after 21 days or 14 days, depends on the county. But so there will be a notification process and there will be a whole side. So if you don't actually participate in the process, down the road, it's very hard for you to actually come back and say, I didn't approve. Because it was advertised, yes, outside your property.
So it's like a wedding where they say, anybody with objection, you have these days to object. Okay.
Exactly.
So, but neighbors can challenge that and they say, no, we don't want a gas station here. We don't want whatever. They can all like object to that or agree to it.
Exactly. And that happens a lot, especially I've seen like areas like a current example, which has been growing quite rapidly, is the neighbors, someone says, okay, this place is quite good, the homes are coming up quite fast, etc. They won't have a shopping center in an estate. And then everybody says, no, this is a residential area.
Wow.
And it won't happen because so as the landowners or as neighbors, you have an interest to protect your investment at the end of the day. So the government also has the obligation to pay attention to your interests as well.
Okay, so when we are buying plots like in areas marked for residential and we are told, oh, buy these, you can put a gas station here and all that, it's not always that easy.
No. And also knowing what you're buying is very important. I've had clients who bought a land, but the user was a school. And they went, the user was for a school. And they thought they could do something commercial. It can't happen. They tried to do the change of user, the government refused. Because of social amenities. So knowing what you're buying is very important at the end of the day. Again, due diligence plays a big role in terms of the whole process. And knowing that I'm not buying a lemon is very important. So you could be buying something for say a shopping mall, but the user is a school. You never have a shopping mall there at the end of the day.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much, Brian. Honestly, I thought this would take like 45 minutes. You're giving us some really, really good nuggets, amazing information for us. And after all this, I believe that it will be ridiculous if somebody tried to handle all these from another country. I think it would be better to just have an attorney and get rid of all these headaches. But we talked about the neighbor's approval. Diaspora address. I know you touched a little bit about the address, either your attorney's address or whatever address PO box you use. In the last presentation I saw you do, I don't know if it was you or somebody else who said under no circumstances should you use your diaspora address as far as matters relating to land when you're buying land in Kenya.
That must have been the other speaker. Quite frankly, in terms of address, it's more of identification, as I said. You're just making sure that you actually exist. And this person can be benchmarked to a specific place. So that's all like Russia.
I think as far as the Kenyan government, that is, maybe, I don't remember, but I think it was more about like here and Kosam, knowing that you have a property somewhere else, or they'll come for you. They also want a piece of that. They want money. But I don't want to talk to that because I don't have a lot of details. Let's see, the title deed delays in Kenya, is it not uniform across the board? Like there are companies that can give you title deed within weeks, couple of months, and I've seen people wait for 6 months, a year. What's going on? Is there a county government in Kenya that will take that long to issue a title deed if there's no issue with it?
So I will answer it like in two phases. Once a land exists and all the documents are actually straightforward, and there's an existing title document, the registration and transfer process is easy.
Okay.
If any relating to maybe you've bought a land in a brokerage, example, so you buy a share, then there's a conversion of that share to a title document. That may take time, and go through a process of the committees, land allocation issues, the land registry issues, etc. So I've seen instances where documents take longer than even 1 year. But it's due to processes which are beyond even. Yes.
Okay. Could it take 10 years if you've paid and the seller is saying everything is okay, lakini maneno ya serikali usiharakishe, hiyo inaendaga pole pole? Could you be waiting for a title deed for 10 years?
Hey, 10 years is a long time. Even at 10 years, I think you should just cut your losses and run.
Yeah, I know somebody who's waiting since 2010, actually 13 years now. Documents, my last question. And I know you mentioned them before, but what documents are you required to have before buying or completing a large transaction in Kenya?
So my advice to all my clients, depending on like what you're doing, is it might vary in terms of, is it like an apartment, is it like a shamba, etc. So one, have the title document at least, have the transfer document duly signed by both parties and registered at the land registry. I also ask for the KRA payment slip for stamp duty.
Yes.
I also ask for land rates and land rent clearance certificates. And depending on the complexity, if it's like an apartment, we'll ask for NEMA certifications, making sure that NEMA approved the apartment, etc. But the main documents are the ones I said earlier on. Everything else is good, we'll have. And then if it's land also, which I put as my completion documents, is the beacon certificates. Because that's against a surveyor's license. And the surveyor, once they have that, they're going to play ball.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Yes. And for me as a buyer, you must have your Kenyan ID or passport and KRA PIN. Those are the two documents.
Yeah. So for the buyer, of course, as in all those documents are what a buyer really wants. But in terms of what you have to give out is your copy of ID, which of course will be certified for you. A copy of a KRA PIN for purpose of the stamp duty and the registration for that stamp duty, and also your passport photo as well.
Perfect.
And then you sign the documents.
Can you have the people on your title deed, like for example, you want to put your kids, or that's something you have to do on your will?
You can do joint ownership of land.
Okay.
The only issue is how do you manage joint ownership of land?
Okay.
That's usually, yes, but you can do, so example, it's you and your friend or you and your child, let's say you're two of you, you can do joint ownership of land. There is no restriction about joint ownership of land in Kenya. Yeah.
All right, I got you. Thank you so much, Brian. You've given us so much information. So much information. I appreciate. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from this. And I believe that you still have some more, maybe at some time in the future, we'll bring you back. But how can these people get in touch with you? If I want to reach your farm, maybe for doing all this stuff for me, how can we get in touch with you?
So, okay, first of all, thank you for having me. And I do appreciate your time as well.
Okay.
You have asked me some interesting questions that most people tend to actually overlook. And I'm happy that people are getting more empowered in terms of knowing what they should be doing when it comes to land transactions in the country. And in terms of course, support and how you can find us, etc., you can go to our website, which is www.bnkadvocates.com, bnkadvocates.com. And in terms of my number, it's 0702 70 64 49. Of course, you have to put the 254 ahead of it. And yes, so that's how you can find me. We work a lot with the diaspora clients as well. And some of them started off with the same challenges in terms of not knowing what to do. Most of them actually referrals. And I'm happy to see that I'm plugging in, of course, it more at diaspora people and bringing value across the table as well, because it's all about securing investment for the greater good at the end of the day.
Awesome.
So I'm happy. I'm actually happy that you actually had me. I'm hoping I was making sense.
Oh, you
most
were.
of the time.
Oh my gosh, you gave us a lot of good information. I didn't even know a lot of stuff I just learned in the last hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin your number and your website at the description box, and also the pinned comment at the top will have Brian's information, number, and website. So that if you're interested, you have further question, you can reach to him through the website or his phone number. I'm sure on the website there will be an email if you need to email him, and make sure you let him know that you saw him on this interview. Maybe you'll get a good deal with him if he become your attorney.
Of course, they will get a good deal with me.
Okay,
from
all
this.
all right. So you guys can see he has a lot of knowledge. We just talked for the last hour, a little bit of an hour, and I'm sure there is much more. But that's all you get for today. Thank you so much, Brian. You have a good evening in Kenya. I think it's evening now. And
it's 7:30, yes.
Yes, and I appreciate you doing this for us. Really, really appreciate.
And thank you for having me, and I appreciate your time as well.
All right. You have a great evening.
Okay, you too. Have a good day.